So the Prem season resumes on Friday this week. It's Man City Burnley, company facing his old team. And it's been a long summer since the previous season ended. But I just wanted to do my predictions for the season and just see where everyone places, where we can look back at it next year. So yeah, let's get into it. So at 20th, I think it has to be Sheffield United. It's a tough one. You don't want to always just predict the teams that have gone up, but if you're looking at Sheffield United, they've lost and died to Marseille, and they're also apparently losing Sanderberg to Burnley, another promoted team. It just doesn't look like they have the squad to keep them up, really. I think they had that McAtee from Man City last season who helped, but he's not gone back to them. You've got Ryan Brewster, who's failed to flat. He hasn't really done much since he joined for Liverpool. So in my opinion, it's just it's a no-brainer, really. I know previously under Chris Wilder they surprised everyone and came ninth, I believe, but I don't think it's going to be like this season. I think they're going to finish rock bottom at 20th, and yeah, I just think they're going to go straight back down. So at 19th, I think it's going to have to be Wolves. I mean, as recording this today, Lopetegui has left his role because I think he wasn't happy with the selling of players, financial fair play and just the restrictions he had. And I just don't think they have the team to really compete anymore. They have some good players still. They've got the Nunes, they've got the Max Kilman, they've got the Pedro Neto if he can keep fit, the Cunhas. But I just think the deterioration of that squad now, Neves is gone, that Collins is gone, he's gone to Brentford, I believe, and Moutinho has left, I believe. So it's turned into a bit of I think they're past the sell-by date now. And if they're also looking for a manager just after pre-season, I don't think it looks good for Wolves, and I think they're going to go back down. I think they've had a great stay in the Premier League, but to me, just the quality of their squad now, they've even let Jimenez go to Fulham. And I know he's been off it since his head injury, but still, it's just the depth of that squad. They haven't really brought anyone in. And yeah, I think it's going to be Wolves who are going to finish 19th. So at 18th, I've got Luton Town. I think it's an unfortunate one because, like I'd say, I just don't think the quality of the squad will be good enough for the Premier League. I know they had a good season in the Championship. I actually like some of the signings they made. I think they've been quite shrewd. I think they've got Tahith Chong from Birmingham City, who ex-Man United player. They've got Marvelous Nakamba, ex-Aston Villa player, who, both of them are showing ability. I mean, Nakamba against City in that, the League Cup final a few years back, showed he had a lot of quality, and obviously some other games, but I just don't think they have the quality really to, score too many goals. I think they'll keep it tight at the back next year. Obviously, they're a hard-working, strong team, but I think when you go into the Premier League, you do need those players who can offer something more, and I just don't think they're going to have it next season. So I'm going to put Luton to go down as well. So at 17th, I'm going to go Fulham. I think this might be controversial because they had a really good season last year. Marco Silva and Mitrovic had a great year. They brought in Paulinho, who's just a revelation. So many big clubs have been after him. But you see it with, Mitrovic's failed Saudi move, and there's some issues there. Silva also rejected a job offer that might he get another one later in the season. He might not hold out for if Fulham aren't doing too well. They brought in Calvin Bassey from Ajax, who used to play for Rangers, and I just don't think it's enough. I think they're gonna run out of the luck next season. Not that they ran with their luck last year, but Paulinho's injured. I think the issues with Mitrovic could run a bit deeper. And if you look at it, when Mitrovic went down last year, they had Vinicius, who he looked okay, but he didn't really take over what Mitrovic was doing. Solomon left. He's gone to Spurs now, so he was another player that offered a bit more for Fulham. But, they brought back Willian, which I thought he was potentially going to go to Nottingham Forest, which I think would have been a miss for Fulham. So that is a good one. But to me, I think they'll just stay up. But I think it's going to be a tough season for Fulham. So at 16th, I've got Crystal Palace. Again, I think Crystal Palace, it's going to be a tough season. They've obviously lost Zaha to Galatasaray. And to be honest, by the time this video is out, Michael Elise could also have left because it's been news that Chelsea and Man City have been after him, so that could be a massive blow for them again. However, if they do keep Elise, they've got Eze, they've got Decore, you never know with what's his name, Edouard up top for them. So there are a lot of options there, but I think one aspect that could really help Palace next season is the addition of Lewis Hall, who should be signed by the time this video does come out from Chelsea on loan. Because I know they have a good left back in Tariq Mitchell, but from what I hear, he is injured at the moment. And from last season, I thought Lewis Hall looked excellent for Chelsea. So much attacking threat. He seems like he can maybe play centre mid, but also left wing back, left back or so. And I think if Palace can, bring him into the squad and play him, either that's a rotation for Mitchell or they're actually going to put him in centre mid, left wing or so, I think it could really help them next season. But again, I do think it's going to be a tough one for Palace. Hopefully they can keep on to Mark Gay and Anderson in the middle, because I know Gay has been rumoured with some moves elsewhere. But I think if they can keep the team relatively intact, I think they should be able to stay up. But again, I just think it's going to be a tough one. So at 15th, we've got Everton. And if you're looking at the transfer business that they've done this window, then you're probably looking at them for maybe relegation favourites, because they brought in Ashley Young and Danjuma, and that's really it. But I think from the foundation they had the back end of last season, I know they weren't great, but one, I'm a massive fan of Sean Dyche. I think he did an excellent job at Burnley. And now that he's got a pre-season with these players and he's kind of brought them into the way he thinks more and the way he wants them to play, I think it can really help them. You got Dwight McNeil, who one of Sean Dyche's favourites. I think he came into his own the back end of last season a bit more. They could keep Calvin Lewin fit, which is always a big if. And then they finally got Danjuma after missing out on him in January to Spurs. But I think they've got some really talented players there that they shouldn't be in the relegation zone, really. They got Decore looked decent back in last season. Maybe I'm just remembering that Brighton game where they demolished them. But I think they have got some good players. If they can get Ben Godfrey back, if they can get that Patterson back from injury on the right. I don't know if they're going to keep Moise Kean, because I believe his loan has ended from Juventus. But to me, I think Everton have enough, and I back Sean Dyche enough to keep them up. So to me, it's going to be 15 for Everton. So at 14th, this might be the biggest surprise yet, but it's going to be Burnley. I think Company is going to take this Burnley team and really do something in the Prem next season. Obviously, it's not challenging for Europe or so, but I think he's going to keep them up and back quite a bit. They brought in Trafford from Man City, leaves out Bolton last season. And if you look in the under 21 Euros, he looks a talented keeper, doesn't he? Then they've also brought in Nathan Redmond on the right midfield, from Besiktas. And, he seemed to tail off at the end of his Southampton career, but he obviously has, not potential, he has ability, doesn't he? Because he's played in the Premier League for 5, 6, 7 years now, so he obviously knows, he has experience in that position. And also I think if they do bring in Sander Berg, which I believe they probably will have by the time this video comes out, but I think he is, from what I read from Sheffield United fans or so, he seems a bit lazy sometimes. It seems he might be in and out of games. But when he is on his day, because I remember seeing it in the Premier League, I think it's excellent. I wanted him for Liverpool, and I couldn't understand why he's been in the Championship for the last 2 years, because he's 6'5", he's good on the ball, he's physical, and I think he could be an excellent defensive midfielder. So to me, if Sander Berg comes and those signings can fit in, and Company can keep his style of play going from last season, I think they could come 14th, and I think it could be a good season for Burnley. So at 13th, I've got Nottingham Forest. I think Steve Cooper could really push on this season with Forest. I think they brought in some decent young players. They brought in Alanga from Manchester United, who has looked promising, and I think they're going for a really good deal, to be fair. I believe they brought in Matt Turner from Arsenal, the backup keeper. So they didn't get Henderson. They've let go of Navas from his loan deal from PSG. And I think they're after Jose Sarr at one point, but Matt Turner seems a good player or so. And I think that really big squad that they had last year seems to be dwindling a bit, which is good because it's getting more tighter or so. But I think next season, I think Steve Cooper, if they do keep a Brennan Johnson, because I know Brentford have been after him recently, and Forest rejected a £35 million bid for him. So it's a tough one, because how long will they be able to keep hold of him if Brentford keep on pursuing him? But I think they will keep him, and I think they can really push on. And if it's a 13th place finish, I think that's really good for Forest, because if they keep on getting some backing and they persist with Steve Cooper, you never know, they could push for top 10 the season after that, or who knows where it could go. So yeah, it'd be 13th for Nottingham Forest. So at 12th, I'm going to go with Brentford. I think they're going to have a bit of a drop off this season because of mainly the Tony injury. They've brought in a few good players. They brought in Collins from Wolves, which I think is a good signing. They can add him to the defence with, they got Bentley and they got Pinnock and they got that Ajer from Celtic. So I think they're going to have a strong defence. But Tony is just such a big miss because everything he does is so integral to that Brentford team. His hold-up play is so good. His set pieces are so good. He scored 20 goals last season, which you're taking that out of the squad. If you're telling me Brian Bueno is going to do that, then it's fair enough. I don't think he is. If you're telling me this is going to do that or Kevin Schade is going to do that, I think all those three will be good players for them, and I think it will help them progress, especially that Kevin Schade, because I think he does look like a top young player. But having Tony only for half a season, I think it's going to be really tough for them. So to me, it's probably going to be a 12th place finish. Not a bad one. I think they're still going to be an entertaining team to watch. And once they have Tony, I think they will have probably quite a good run of form, just because the momentum that he'll bring from his comeback or so. But yeah, to me, it's going to be 12 for Brentford. So at 11th, I'm going to go with Bournemouth. I think they are going to have quite a good season this year. They brought in a new coach, Areola, and from all accounts, he seems a really promising coach. He's come from Rayo Vallecano, and from what I've read on The Athletic, last season, Rayo Vallecano had the second highest high turnover to lead into a shot percentage in the top 5 leagues, which was just after Bayern Munich. So it looked like he's going to implement, his high pressing into the Bournemouth team. And I think that could just really help them because, it's even players like Dom Solanke improved last season. I think that James Traore, who only played a few games, but they've signed him on a permanent. You got Justin Kluivert, who they've signed from Roma, which, if you look at him, he's been quite a promising player. I think he hasn't been great at Roma, but was it PSV he was at before that? I think he was really promising at them. So I think with all these young players that they have in the squad, I think Lerma is going to be a big miss for them in midfield, because I think he was their player of the season and he was one of their better players last year. But regardless of that, I think they could really have a good season this year and definitely stay above the drop. But yeah, push for mid-table or so. So at 10th, I'm going to go with West Ham. It's a tough one with West Ham because they've just sold Declan Rice for a lot of money and he was their best player, so there's always going to be a bit of a hangover with that. But I think, first of all, I think they've signed a really good replacement in that Alvarez from Ajax, because, was it Chelsea were after him last summer? But they won't sell him because they've sold too many players. So I think they've done a bit of shrewd business. I think he's on about 30 million. But if you look at it, they're also going for Maguire and McTominay for about 60 million combined. And if Man United do accept that, which I think they should accept that, then they've got 3 really good players there to add on to, I think Bowen found his form again the back end of last year, as well as Ben Rama. So the strike force is a tough one because they've just let Scamacca go to Atalanta. But if you can get Danny Ings maybe firing again, maybe Antonio back to his form from the previous 2 seasons ago, then you've got a good team there. And I think West Ham's defence is always pretty solid. I think the fullbacks aren't the best, but you've got the centre backs, and I think it's that Gerd, Zuma. If they do get Harry Maguire, I think it could be really solid, back line for them. But I think they'll do quite well in the Europa League next season, maybe get to the quarter, semi-final or so. But I don't think it's going to be as bad a season as people think for West Ham, because especially the players they're bringing in or potentially might bring in by the time the season starts, I think it could really add to the squad depth. So at 9th, I'm going to go with Brighton. And again, might be controversial because they had such a good season last year. But I think just the players that they are losing, plus potentially might lose in Caicedo, and they've lost McAllister, and Chelsea have taken back Levi Colwill. I think it takes away a lot of their instrumental players last year. I mean, if Caicedo goes, 2 out of the 3 midfielders have left. And I know they've replaced it with Mahmoud Dahoud, or even James Milner from Liverpool, but I just don't think they'll have enough to compete where they were last season. I think the João Pedro business is a really shrewd signing because I think they needed a striker. Even though Evan Ferguson and Danny Welbeck were, solid strikers last season, I think João Pedro could really come in there and be their focal point. Hopefully Tariq Lamptey can come back because he barely played last season, and I really like Tariq Lamptey. I think he offers so much down that right hand side, and he can link up with Solly March, he can link up with Dahoud on that right centre mid lot. But I think they'll do well in the Europa League, in my opinion. I think they'll get maybe to the quarter-final, semi-final, and I think they can really push on because they still have got some good squad depth. Matoma's not going anywhere, Solly March isn't going anywhere, and they got that in Sizio, I think his name is, that young lad. But they've still got roughly the same squad as last year. But in my opinion, just those few losses that they have done so far could just hinder them slightly. I think they're still going to have a good season, but also the competitiveness of the big sides, I think, will be increased next year, as you'll see later on. But yeah, to me, it's going to be 9 for Brighton. So this next one is a tough one because it's got a few variables to it. But in 8th, I've got Spurs. It's obviously the elephant in the room is Harry Kane, and if he's going to Bayern Munich. At the time of recording of this video, David Ornstein has reported constantly today that Bayern Munich have bidded for Harry Kane again, the best part of €100 million. So if Spurs do accept that, which who knows with Daniel Levy, I don't think he ever will, because I just don't think he will let his pride, he will leave his pride in the way, and he won't, accept a good offer for Harry Kane because he is leaving next season. But regardless if they do or don't, I think Ange Postecoglou coming in this season, from all I hear, is just attack, and he wants to play football the quote-unquote right way. So I do think Spurs are going to be a really entertaining team this season. You've got Kulusevski on the right. I think he'll have a great season, like I said in a previous video. You've got Son, and even Richarlison. I mean, like I said, I'm not a massive fan of Richarlison, but I think Postecoglou potentially could get the best out of Richarlison. You've still got players like Basuma who need to, prove themselves after a poor season last year. Does Ndombele get back in the squad? Because everyone knows he's so talented, but can Postecoglou get a bit of a tune out of him? But just to me, the defence is going to let them down because other than Romero, to me, there's not a top defender in that back line. Is Jed Spence going to be put a right back, or I've heard he might be getting sold at the moment? So there's quite a few variables with this team, and I think it should be a building process or a rebuilding process, because to me they shouldn't be trying to challenge for, never challenge for the title at the moment, but regardless, even top 4, because they should get Postecoglou's system in place, and they shouldn't sack him by Christmas. They should try and keep him until the end of the season and see how it goes. If they finish 8th or 9th, then so be it. They could use the Kane money if they sell him to reinvest and bring some more youth through, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of things with Spurs at the moment, but to me it's going to be an 8th place finish, but I think they're going to be a fun team to watch next year. So 7th might be a bit controversial or so because they did so well last season, but I'm going to go with Newcastle. I still think they'll have a great season. I love the players that they brought in. I think Tonali, from what I've seen, seems a top player when he was at Milan. I hear he's struggling to settle in at the moment in pre-season, but like we always say, pre-season doesn't mean anything. It's just about fitness. But Harvey Barnes, I think, is a great addition to the squad. And then you've got Livramento, who he seems to have fallen off the face of the earth for the last year or so because he's been injured. But you remember about a year and a half ago, he was one of the most touted young fullbacks in the country. So I think that's a really under-the-radar sign that they could, is either back up for Kieran Trippier or could he take Dan Burns' spot and they go a bit more attacking. But to me, it's just the Champions League because I'd like Newcastle to do well in the Champions League. I think they will probably get to the round of 16, pushing the quarterfinals maybe. But it's just a squad depth because although the attack seems to be quite loaded out, you still, in my opinion, just don't have the squad depth in that defence, because if you look at the left backs, it's Dan Burn and Matt Target, unless you maybe put Livramento there, then Trippier, Livramento, and then you've got the centre backs, Fabian Schär, you've got Sven Botman, But then who else have you got? Because they've let go of Kieran Clark. Not that he was good enough for this level anyway. And who else you got? Jamal Lascelles, who again is probably bottom Premier League tier. So if one of those centre backs do go down, which now they have to play even more games, it could well happen. I don't think they have the replacements to go in for them, because Botman especially was so massive for them last season. If he goes down, that could be Newcastle over for a while. But I still think they'll have a good season. Seventh, they could push to sixth or fifth maybe, or who knows, they might get Champions League again. But I think last season was one of those that caught everyone by surprise, but now people are a bit more used to them, and I think they'll struggle a bit with the depth. So it's going to be seventh for me for Newcastle. So six is probably going to be the biggest surprise of the top eight or so far. But, and if you see my previous videos, you should see this coming, but it's going to be Aston Villa. I think what Unai Emery did as soon as he came in from about January or so, brought in that Alex Moreno, and if you look at the transfers this summer, Paul Torres, Tielemans, and Moussa Diaby from Mönchengladbach, it's just, no, sorry, Bayer Leverkusen. I think it's a great transfer window to add to the already pretty strong team. The striker position is a tough one because who's a backup behind Watkins? Is it that Cameron Archer or so? Who, from what I hear from Villa fans, promising young player, but obviously he's not the Danny Ings that, even though he didn't do great at Villa, who you'd ideally want. I think that defence is rock solid. I think, you got Moreno, still got Digne, and you got great backline of, Konza, Pau Torres, Tyrone Mings, even got Callum Chambers in there, and obviously Matty Cash. But I think just the way Emery plays, and I think especially Pau Torres, the way he loves to drive the ball forward, I think Villa really are going to do something this season. Adding Tielemans to that midfield as well. He's controversial, Tielemans, because some people might call him lazy at times. But you got Douglas Luiz, McGinn, Tielemans, Jacob Ramsey or so. And I think it could be a real team that, even though they have the Conference League, which could hinder them slightly, I personally think they'll probably win the Conference League. But I think it'd be a great season if they do get sixth, which I could personally see. And they can still do some more business the back end of this window or January, which will add to the squad even more. I think Emery is just a proven winner, as he has in Europe so many times now. And, it took Villarreal to the semi-final of the Champions League a couple of years ago. So I think he could do, not similar with that, but, good job with Villa this season and get sixth place. So at fifth, I'm going to go with Chelsea. I think this is going to be a big improvement from last season with Chelsea, because personally I think Pochettino is one of the best managers in the world. And I think they've made some good signings so far. They've got Nkunku finally. Unfortunately, he's just been ruled out for about 4 months with an injury, so that's going to be a big miss. But, they brought that Jackson in. They're bringing Colwell back from Chelsea. I just think they're going to be, an overall better squad, because they've just reduced a lot of the dead wood around the team. They got rid of Mendy and they brought in Sanchez in net, so I think they're ideally going to have a defined number one now with Sanchez coming in from Brighton and then Kepa on the bench. But if you can keep Reece James fit, if you can keep Chilwell fit, I think you've got two of the best right backs in the world there. And I think Mudryk could really kick on this year, because obviously last season he didn't look great, did he? Especially with his price tag. But I personally won't judge any of the Chelsea players last year with just the mess they were in. But with Enzo Fernandez in that midfield, hopefully Sterling gets back to his best. The only problem I can see with Chelsea, which will hinder him getting the top four, is the striker. Because if that Nicholas Jackson does kick on, I think they could definitely push for top four. But if it's between Lukaku or it's between Jackson can't find his feet early, Lukaku leaves, then I just think they're going to struggle for goals again like they have for years now. So at fourth, and this is hopeful, but I can see Liverpool just scraping it this season. If you look at the attack, I think it's quality. I think it's about 5 deep or so. They can't choose. They've got 3 options for the striker. But if you look at the midfield and the defence, I just think it's letting them down, because even though they've spent 90 million, 100 million on 2 midfielders, McAllister and Szoboszlai, they've let 5 midfielders go and they brought in 2, which by the time this video's out, if they brought in Lavia, Again, it adds to them, but I just don't think they have enough in that position because, first of all, they're all really young, and second of all, there's just not enough of them, I don't think. I think Liverpool probably needed a new centre-back as well to maybe replace Matip or Gomez because injury-prone, and I just think especially Matip, he isn't at his best anymore. But the reason I think they can get fourth is I think just the quality of the players, especially up top. I think it's going to be a season for Liverpool that might not be too many clean sheets, but it'll be one of those that they'll win games 4-3 or so. Maybe a surprise could be Ben Doak because he's shone in pre-season so far, just young 17-year-old lad, and he could be brought into the squad maybe eventually. Ideally, a loan I think would be good for him, but you know, if Salah maybe needs a bit of a rest, put him on the right wing or so. I think it's going to be a tough season for Liverpool, and I think it's going to be a few years now until they challenge for the title unless there's heavy investment in the squad, which I personally don't see happening. But I think they can at least get top four and potentially win the Europa League if they can, utilise the squad depth enough. So at third, I'm going to go with Manchester United. I'm not sure with United because I do really think Ten Hag's a fantastic manager. However, I don't think they've got enough. It's a tough one because Højlund, he's coming in 72 million. None of us really know much about him. He scored 9 goals in 32 games at Atalanta. So it's not the record that you can instantly go, wow, he's going to come in and score a lot like Haaland did. But he could be a really promising young player. Obviously, Man United sees something in him. I think Mason Mount is an excellent piece of business. Just because he played last year doesn't make him a rubbish player anymore. If it was 2 years ago, people would be lauding it so highly. So I think that midfield is excellent for Man United. Eriksen, Bruno, Mason Mount, Casemiro. I think it's fantastic. Then I like the wingers as well. And I know they've replaced De Gea with Onana. I think De Gea was slightly a scapegoat for them last year. I think Onana will bring in more passing out from the back. But the problem is if Varane and Martinez go down, Onana can pass it from the back really well, but who's he passing it to? Luke Shaw can probably take the ball on a half turn, but Wan-Bissaka definitely can't. Maguire can't. Lindelof can a bit, but he's not brilliant at it. So I don't think Onana's just going to change the team completely because even though he allows them to pass out from the back and progress it from the back more like Manchester City or an Arsenal do, I still don't just think it's going to change Man United completely. And De Gea still did win the Golden Glove last year, regardless of if he deserved it or not. He still did. So you're taking a keeper like that out and you're putting Onana in, who isn't Premier League proven. He looked good at Ajax, he looked good at Inter, but we never know. So it'd be interesting to see, but I can't see them challenge for the title. Maybe another domestic double this year. I can see them maybe against the quarterfinal of the Champions League, but to me, I can't see them challenging Man City or Arsenal. So at second, it's obviously going to be Man City or Arsenal. And to me, it's going to be Arsenal. I think they're just going to come up short again. I think they're going to have a really good season. And I think they're going to push on in the Champions League, FA Cup and Carabao. I think they're going to challenge for all 4. But I just don't think they have enough at the moment. I think the striker is going to let them down because Jesus is fantastic, but he's injury prone. And Nketiah is good. He has a bit of a purple patch, but he's not the best deputy in that Arsenal could probably get. Declan Rice is obviously a fantastic signing, maybe signing of the summer. And Havertz is a bit of a wild card or so. So you never know. They might bring what he had at Leverkusen out, which if you do, then you've got a fantastic player. But 60 million is a lot to commit in a potential flop. And then they brought Timber in for the defence, which is fantastic because they've needed the depth in that defence. But to me, they just don't have. They don't have what the next team have, because even though they've got Saka, I think Smith Rowe is going to play a big part in this season because he can add to that depth as well. Trossard, he could potentially play up front as well. You've got Martinelli, so they've got so many options. But maybe last season gave them so much experience in not to take it for granted when you're at the top and put your foot on the throat or so. So in a world, I could potentially see them winning it. But to me, it's going to be a second place finish and then a high, maybe semi-final Champions League finish. And at first, obviously is going to be Manchester City. And I know I look like a big hypocrite because I did a video saying how Man City might be going backwards or so, how they might not have improved. I mean, how can you improve? As I got told on a treble winning season, which is completely true. But I just think they still have enough. They still have the quality there to win the league. And I do think squad rotation, Phil Foden eventually has to start for that squad, which could be an issue along the way. But I just think with Haaland improving so much more, De Bruyne is just the best midfielder in the world. Brought in Gvardiol, brought in Kovacic, so they're two good players to bring into the squad. I think Pep just knows what he's doing at this point, and they finally got the monkey off the back of the Champions League, so they don't feel they have to win that. They've done it now, and they can just focus on keeping the dynasty going instead of proving the doubters wrong. But I think Haaland again, I don't think it's a flash in the pan. He's obviously going to do 25, 30 plus goals a season again. De Bruyne, if he stays fit, would be fantastic. The Gundogan loss is going to be a tough one, and also if they lose Bernardo Silva, because they've already lost Mahrez on the right, so they're at a bit of a deficit over there. But I can see Julian Alvarez getting put on the right a bit, because obviously he was on the bench last year because he was Haaland's deputy, but I can see him playing on the right, Grealish on the left, and then Haaland up top. But I think it's going to be another title for Manchester City, and it just, as to this league, that it just feels hopeless sometimes. But you never know. I'd like Arsenal, I'd like United, I'd like Liverpool to challenge for it, just to make it more competitive, and hopefully they do. But with the quality they have, even with maybe Calvin Phillips getting more involved in the squad next season, I just think they're going to do it again. And until Pep leaves, they're just going to dominate this league. So thanks for watching. That's all my predictions for today. Let's see how it goes this season. I'll probably be wrong with 90% of them, so it'll be funny to see and go back and look at them. But yeah, cheers for watching. If you can like and subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you want to leave a comment giving your predictions, tell me how wrong I am, tell me how right I am, that'll be fantastic. Well, yeah, see you next time.